Hello, hello. Hello. Hi, team. Hello. Here is your Thursday poll question from Smirkanish.com. Trump's battle with which institution has the highest stakes for the nation? Your answer options are big law, the media, or academia. Big law, the media, or academia. More on that in just a moment. Thank you to my friends at Play Gun Lake, the online casino and sportsbook app. You can live bet while you watch the game. Live betting is better on the Play Gun Lake online casino and sportsbook app. Detroit baseball rolling along, plus pro golf tour and the pro basketball hoops, which I've been watching a lot of this season. Hockey playoffs as well. Live bet it all. Doesn't even matter if your team wins or loses because you have so many different ways for you to have skin in the game. Whether Detroit baseball wins or not, there's always another way for you to win on the Play Gun Lake Sportsbook and online casino app. They've got those new hot online slots based on some of the streamers that you love, like Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, Squid Game. And then you've got Cash Eruption at 88 Fortunes and Cleopatra, all that good stuff. You've got to be 21 and in Michigan to partake. It's the Play Gun Lake online casino and sportsbook app. If you've got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Yesterday, poll question on Wednesday, Smirkanish.com daily poll. Does the First Amendment protect a public middle school student's right to wear a T-shirt saying there are only two genders? In the third hour of the radio program yesterday, I really took my time and did a deep dive on this case. It's from Massachusetts. It involves a seventh grader. He goes to school with a shirt that says there are only two genders. He gets as far as first period. It happens to be gym class. They send him home for the day because they believe that shirt to be violative of the disruption standard that governs these sort of First Amendment looks. So he goes home and then comes back on a different day that he's now wearing a shirt that says there are only two, and then it's censored. And that doesn't cut it either. They give him the opportunity to change his shirt so he doesn't miss another day of school. I figure it's like the parent. I mean, what seventh grader wants to involve him or herself into a frontline matter of this type of political controversy? I suspect it's like the parents, maybe the dad, because he became the point of contact with the school. But it's interesting because the question is, like, how is a school to determine what the First Amendment rights are of a student like this? How is a school supposed to determine that standard? And there's a case called Tinker. Tinker was applied by the district court. It was applied in a slightly different way by the appellate court in the First Circuit. But they came to the same conclusion, which was that the school had every right not to allow the "there are only two genders" T-shirt. So now it goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decides not to take it. And in a case like that, where they decide not to take it, they don't write opinions. But the option exists for those who wanted the court to hear the case can write. Anybody can write, actually. But in this case, it's Justice Alito. He writes because he's worked up and thinks they should have taken this case because there's a very fundamental First Amendment principle that is at stake. Clarence Thomas joins him. And he essentially says, and I'm paraphrasing and just trying to explain it in plain English, but where this particular middle school had put its thumb on the scale by recognizing Pride Week, by sending out a social media post showing someone wearing a different T-shirt, which said something like, we, they, them, it's all the same to me. You know, the very inclusionary pro LGBTQ plus message. They said, well, then you've got to allow, this guy, Alito said, to come and wear his shirt. And just because it's distasteful to some doesn't mean that you have to keep him at bay. He has a First Amendment right, and the First Amendment sometimes is messy. So yesterday, does the First Amendment protect a public middle school student's right to wear a T-shirt saying there are only two genders? 68.12% of us said, yeah. And only 31.88% agreed with the outcome of this case, because the outcome of this case is that he's precluded. I'd like to think that I had some influence on the voting there. Okay, back to today, the Thursday poll question. Trump's battle with which institution has the highest stakes for the nation? Big law, the media, academia. I raised this with Mark Halpern yesterday because he was my guest in the second hour of the program. He went with academia. And he said academia because the other two can fend for themselves, big law and the media. He almost turned me, but my answer is the media. I think that the stakes are highest for the media because of the watchdog role that the media plays without the media keeping an eye on Trump. If media outlets continue to cower, I think it bodes poorly for the nation. I really do. But it's not an easy call. And others who called yesterday said academia because from academia spring, those who go into the media and those who go into big law. Let me just break these down quickly. With regard to big law, in recent months, the Trump administration has issued executive orders designed to punish elite law firms who have either represented clients against Trump's interests or hired people that Trump disliked. Perkins Coie. They represented the Clinton campaign. They were responsible for the creation of the Steele dossier. So they are in Trump's sights for that. Jenner and Block, they hired Andrew Weissman. Wilmer Hale, they hired Robert Mueller. Paul Weiss, they hired Mark Pomerantz. All, would-be Trump opponents. And so Trump is what did he say during the course of the campaign in that CPAC speech? I will be your vengeance. I think were his words. He's being his own vengeance. He's also alleged that each of these firms engaged in illegal DEI hiring and promoting practices that amounted to racial discrimination. His orders have included reversing and revoking security clearances, threatening to revoke contracts from companies that do business with the firms. Even in cases where judges ruled against the Trump administration on orders, this factor still does its damage because the clients are not willing to risk losing their federal contracts, so they take their business elsewhere. Or he's attempted to ban certain of these law firms from federal buildings, including courthouses. So how can you represent a client when you can't even get in the building? Very, very heavy-handed. As I say, in each instance that I'm aware of, where the firms have pushed back, the Trump administration has lost. Trump has now decided to push his demands further with these law firms, saying that they may have to do personal or political work for him, in addition to offering pro bono work for causes that he supports. There's great tumult among those being hired out of law school and going to these prestigious firms, or younger associates who are there who disagree with the partners. So very, very contentious. Disappointing to me that so many law firms turned tail and ran from the fight with Trump when instead, this is what you're there to do, in my opinion. So there's big law, and then there's the media. A laundry list of things going on here. He sued 60 Minutes and CBS last month, a $20 billion suit because of the way they edited the Kamala Harris interview. Where are the damages? He won the election. This is the sort of lawsuit that would have been laughed out of court previously. And yet there's serious contemplation of settlement now. Why? Because a parent company of CBS, Paramount, wants to undergo a merger acquisition, and they're going to need government approval. He's attempted to revoke the Associated Press White House media access because they wouldn't call it the Gulf of America. He sued the Des Moines Register. There's another one. Do you remember Ann Selzer? Right before the election, she comes out with a poll, and I got to say, it carried the news cycle for a day or two because she showed Harris doing extremely well in Iowa, and everybody said, well, if this is true, then surely she's going to win the race. Trump thought, and I think it's a legitimate concern, that it would depress his vote turnout. But he ended up winning Iowa and winning the Electoral College and winning the popular vote. The ABC suit, there's another one. George Stephanopoulos. Trump had been found liable for sexual abuse, not rape. Stephanopoulos should not have said what he said. Trump sues ABC. They're writing a big check to his presidential library. Again, like the other cases, given the New York Times versus Sullivan actual malice standard, which makes it very difficult for a public figure to be a successful litigant, this is not litigation that in the past would have resulted in a settlement. It ultimately, in my opinion, would have been tossed out. Instead, 15 mil from ABC to his presidential library. He's suing Simon & Schuster. He's suing a group of 20 media companies, including Forbes, The Guardian, Reuters, Axios, MSNBC, for defamation because they incorrectly reported that Truth Social lost $73 million in value when it launched in 2022. Now NPR and certain of its affiliates are all being sued by Trump. And there was a story that I saw and quoted from on air yesterday from Axios that said newsrooms are being cautioned by their management. Be careful, because Trump will come gunning for us too. What a chilling impact that is, in the same way that there's this chilling impact on big law. And then, of course, there's academia. Since last month, the Trump administration has frozen $3.2 billion in grants and contracts with Harvard. They accuse Harvard of having a liberal bias and allowing anti-Semitic behavior on campus. By the way, I believe Harvard does have a liberal bias. I believe that Harvard, like so many others, including UCLA, including Columbia, were way too tolerant of the protests in the aftermath of 10/7 by pro-Palestinian forces. However, I think that Trump, and I've made this very clear, is using this as a shield, as a subterfuge to go after academia, especially Harvard, which I think to him probably just represents the epitome of all those forces that align against him. You know, you go to Harvard and then you work for big law, or you work in big media and you go on MSNBC and you criticize Donald Trump. I think that's how he sees it. And although I believe that the schools that we're talking about made a lot of mistakes, I think this is unwarranted. And now to go after 27% of the enrollment at Harvard, which are the international students, I think is disgraceful. So each of these, provides something in defense of democracy. The law firms, the most potent tool for opponents of unconstitutional executive action. You remember Dick the Butcher, right? First kill all the lawyers, though usually used as a criticism of lawyers. The original intent of that line was to show the biggest threat to anarchists like Dick the Butcher are lawyers. So the value of having litigants willing to take on an administration, any administration, I think is essential. The media, honest, fair, truthful reporting, essential to democracy. We need that watchdog role. By the way, I'm not saying there haven't been excesses. There was a caller yesterday at the end of the show who was excellent in saying the academic institutions were far too liberal, far too hostile to Jews, far too hostile to Israel. And I said, yeah, the media, far too willing to look the other way relative to Biden's decline. Yes, I agree with that too. Far too disinterested in the Hunter laptop. I agree with that. So I agree with each of these in terms of the role that they should be playing that they haven't always played. But that does not condone what President Trump is doing. I really like this poll question, and I think you will as well. Go vote on this Thursday at smerconish.com. Trump's battle with which institution has the highest stakes for the nation? Big law, the media, or academia? Cast your ballot, like and subscribe, and set yourself up for notifications. We just passed 60,000 in terms of our YouTube subscribers, and I really appreciate you. Really do. Thank you.